Thanks everyone for joining us, and we are really glad that you can take out time out of your busy schedule to be part of our conversation today. And we are live on Facebook and also on this Zoom platform. So many thanks for joining us from different parts of the world. So as we gather from across the world today to discuss the crucial topic of combating false news, taking insights from Nigeria's recently held general elections, I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge the World Press Freedom Day, which was celebrated yesterday, May 3rd. And this day serves as a reminder of the vital role that journalism plays in promoting accountability, transparency, and democracy around the world. It also reminds us of the challenges faced by journalists and media organizations in carrying out their work freely and without fear of retribution. As we reflect on these challenges, let us also recommit ourselves to defending press freedom and supporting journalists who are working to inform and educate the public, particularly in the face of proliferation of false news. As community manager of the ICFJ's Pamela Howard Forum on Global Crisis Reporting, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar entitled Insights on Combating False News from Nigeria's general elections. Today, we have the honor of hearing from our distinguished guest, Hannah Ajakaye, who is an award-winning journalist, a data enthusiast, and ICFJ Knight Fellow. How are you doing today? And thanks for joining us, our veteran journalist, Ms. Hannah. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Paul, for the invitation. It's good to be here.
Yes, thank you very much. In addition to being a fellow, an ICFJ Knight Fellow, she's the leader of Facts Matter NG, which is an ICFJ-backed initiative that promotes information integrity by making facts go viral. She's personally passionate about development and social justice issues and has been instrumental in using humor, eye-catching videos and graphics to share the truth in a way that is as compelling as the false news that can spread like wildfire on social media. And with her vast experience and expertise, she will share her insights on what journalists covering election or any other falsehood-prone events should do. Her expertise is of great value to all of us today, especially in these times where fake news has become rampant and poses a threat to democracy and social cohesions. And before we go into presentation, I really want to welcome all participants on this session. And like we always do, I would like you to actively engage with us and let us know where you are joining us from and what you would like to know today, insights about yourself and the region where you are joining us from. You can do that using the chat box on the Zoom platform. I've activated the chat box now, so I believe you should be able to interact with us. And for those that are joining us on Facebook live stream, we are also glad that you can join us. And if you don't mind, please let us interact with you. Let us know where you're also joining us from and what you hope to gain from today's insight. Thank you very much, Adizat, Tijani, and others. Please don't be shy. Interact with us. We would like to interact with you too. So with that done, I think I'm ready for our guest speakers presentation, and hopefully we are going to have a robust conversation after she has set the tone on what she considers top priorities, and of course she has dissected the topic from a personal perspective. I think the floor is ready. You can start sharing your slides and take it away from me here.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. Thank you everyone for joining from wherever you're joining from. I am Hannah Ajakaye, and I'm presently joining you from Lagos, Nigeria. So I'll start sharing my screen. So it's good to be here to share experience about, combating disinformation around the elections. So I will be sharing experience based on my work, the work that I do as an ICFJ fellow. So as an ICFJ fellow, I founded the Fact Matter NG initiative, which works towards restoring information integrity on digital platforms. And we've been trying to use digital strategies to expand the audience for fact checking. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, so let's do that trick for full screen.
Yes, I'm doing that now.
Much. Yeah.
So, okay. Okay, so I'll be talking about, sharing insight about combating disinformation, and I'll be sharing experience from the work that I do at Fact Matter, and also maybe experience from other works that kind of inspired the efforts that was put together to combat the disinformation around the election. So if you can see my screen, I just thought to share some terms, just definition of terms for those who may not be familiar with fact checking or combating disinformation. Usually we tend to avoid the term fake news. If you notice, I know that is much more common, but it's a term that is problematic because it has been weaponized. So usually we'll say information disorder, and with information disorder, you have misinformation, which is when someone shares information believing it is true. The intention is not to harm, but maybe out of concern or thinking, oh, I need to share this with someone. So the intention, it's unintentional, it's an unintentional action. Then you have disinformation, which has to do with someone deliberately, intentionally sharing falsehood. And again, you have malinformation, which is information that is based on reality. It is true, but the aim of sharing is to harm someone. So within the context of the elections, you have cases. What we dealt with mostly was cases of disinformation. So I'll proceed. And to proceed, I'd just like to talk about the context of election disinformation in Nigeria. Disinformation is not alien to the Nigerian society. We've had propaganda, we've had us just funny or state actors trying to distort public opinion. But with social media has amplified disinformation on a large scale. And I know some of us are familiar with, Cambridge Analytica, the scandal involving Cambridge Analytica trying to influence election in Nigeria and in Kenya. I think that was the 2015 election. So from now till then, we are seeing like a steady rise in the use of social media to distort public opinion by state actors. Like I wrote, state actors have expanded the scope of disinformation. And with the recent election that was held in February and March 2023, we saw a lot of examples of disinformation that is being pushed by politicians and their supporters. And again, because the last election was seen as, an election that was anticipated, because for the first time we had like the main contenders, and there was the youth energy, which came on from the EndSARS movement, and there was a lot of anticipation. So it was an election where the top contenders really gave it their all, and they used social media to try to influence popular opinion and just try to get a lot of voters. And the front runners and their supporters, they turned social media into a vast propaganda machine, because for some of the partners that I work with as the founder of Fact Matter, we had to do a lot of fact checking about lies, people intentionally pushing out disinformation to discredit the other person or trying to paint their own candidate as the ideal candidates to vote for. And this brings me to some of the trends that we noticed during the election, some of the disinformation trends that were quite noticeable. And I think this information would be useful for those who are monitoring political trends, or even if you are from any other part of the world where you are anticipating to cover elections and the rest. So we saw that there was a lot of false quotes. You have a lot of quotes attributed to politicians and past presidents. And sometimes some of these quotes are just taken out of nowhere, or sometimes taken out of context, maybe like saying, oh, a former president, or saying former President Olusegun Obasanjo has endorsed someone, when in the real sense, nothing of such happened. So people would just sit down on Twitter, on Facebook, and just type like things that are not true and attribute it to people in the society just because they want to get some backing for their candidates. And again, we had claims about the sizes of campaign crowd. If in Nigeria, when it comes to political season, there's usually a lot of campaign going on, and you see politicians hire stadiums or public places where they hope to get a large crowd. And for some of them, the show of crowd is like a show of strength. So when you have a large crowd, or people say, oh, this person has a lot of followers and is likely to win the election. So we saw that some of the political actors keyed into this. And what they tried to do was to share fake photos. Maybe some would take photos from a crusade, like a religious crusade, and pass it off as a campaign photo for one of their candidates, just to show that, oh, they have the crowd. And the issue with this is when people begin to see this sort of images that are not real, when you pass off a crowded image and people think, oh, this person has a lot of supporters. So what happened if the person eventually did not win the election? So this could lead to crisis, and people will be like, oh, the election was rigged, the process which produced the eventual winner was not credible. And we've had situations like this in the past where we've had violence erupt after the declaration of results. And again, you have false attribution. This is closely related to the false quotes that I mentioned earlier. And you see that politicians take it a step higher. They try to burnish their credentials. Some of them try to claim achievements that they've not achieved. They try to, take up positions, and you have some politicians claiming to have bagged PhDs, or some claiming to have built masterpieces or to have revamped the economic situation of the country in their previous positions. What we discovered was that some of those claims most times are misleading, and sometimes they are exaggerated. Like I remember one of the presidential candidates then claiming to have paid up the debts, like Nigeria's national debts, claiming to have played a major role. And in the real sense, when you fact check that claim, you find out that it was not even involved in like the process of repaying that national debt. So you find a lot of state actors and politicians trying to make false attribution to claim glory for what they do not do, or just to mislead the public into believing that they have done a lot and they deserve to get the vote. Another trend is this trend of endorsements. I don't know how it works in other part of the world, especially in the global north, but I know in the global south, when you come to the African society, endorsement plays a big role in the perception of a leader. So what we find was that there was a lot of misinformation and disinformation pushed out by supporters of the candidates. And by the candidates, not just the presidential candidates, I mean candidates, the governorship candidates, and also governorship contesting for House of Assembly elections, which is the National Assembly. So most times there would be photos of endorsements. And one particular one, which I remember, was a photo of one of the presidential candidates with Joe Biden, the president of America. So there was a Photoshop image, and the news was that, oh, Biden has endorsed this person as candidate. If we vote for him and if he wins, that means, oh, Nigeria would have a good economic relation with the US. And again, there was an issue with one of the candidates. There was an issue and some claims about him not being able to go to the US because of maybe some legal issues, and people brought up those images to punish the fact that, oh, he has met Biden, is welcome to the US, voting for him would be like a win for the country. So these are some of the trends, the disinformation trends that we experience while working to combat disinformation during the election. And again, we had cases of altered videos, audio, and photos. I've mentioned, cases of issues of Photoshop, images that are being Photoshopped, people just putting images together, maybe bringing images of like some figures in the society to lay claim that they've been endorsed. And one thing which really played out in this election for some people who followed the election closely in Nigeria, I know we would be aware of the altered video involving Atiku Abubakar, Ifeanyi Okowa, and one other person, where it was said that they were planning to rig the election. And if, for some people, they saw that video and they believed that it was real. But then for fact checkers, going through the videos, one would know that, okay, this was altered. And some of the so-called audio was just like disjointed conversations. They were just that were edited together. And for many members of the public that are not discerning, they will believe, oh, this is real. This is an audio that has been leaked to the public. Whereas in the real sense of the word, it is an altered audio that has been leaked just to distort the opinion of people about that particular candidate. And the issue of distorted videos and image is a problem. And with the speed at which developers are bringing up AI tools like generative AI, it's a huge problem that fact checkers need to combat with. We've had issues of deep fakes, even in the US, where people's voices are being cloned. That is an issue. And we also saw that in this election. And that is made possible because, like I wrote, digital tools has made editing easier. So just anyone can, go on their laptop, they use Photoshop. And even if you don't even have the skills to use Photoshops, now there are AI tools that you can use. And the voices are cloned and these videos are put out, and members of the public who are not discerning, they easily believe this, because even if you look at this part of the world, there's still a gap in digital literacy. So many people do not really have this knowledge. That is why state actors invest a lot on some of this method to influence public opinion. So moving forward from that, you have the issues of targeted disinformation campaign. And we've seen a lot of troll activities, troll armies trying to push narratives. For many African countries, for Nigeria particularly, I know Twitter is like a tool for activism. Social media is a tool for activism. It's like a public sphere where a lot of people come to voice their opinion and a lot of people get their content from. So what we saw during the election is we had monitored the election, and then there were cases of fake hashtags, like people manipulating Twitter or algorithms to trend certain hashtag just to somewhere to tarnish the image of some people, and these are political opponents, or somewhere to tarnish the image of women, some vocal women in the society who are outspoken about, the political activities. Some of them, there's been this fake trending hashtag trying to call them out and to delegitimize them. So that was something which really happened. And again, there is a lot of investments. There was a BBC report, a BBC investigation actually, which showed how influencers are being paid to push out fake news. And here I said that, social media influencers being hired to hack public opinion. They are trying to hack public opinion in the sense that, they are trying to distort public opinion so that some people can make their decision based on things that are not factual. And then we've had issues of Twitter bots. We have the issue of, even the government, the present government having like a media center where a lot of young people are just placed in a room, and what they are told to do is to trend certain hashtags. I remember there was this report by the Center for Democracy and Development, and there was a mention of propaganda secretaries where people are paid as little as maybe 10,000 naira just to share information, to share fake information, especially during political season. So that is something that was witnessed, that we witnessed during this election. And it was one of the particular areas that fact checkers tried to focus on while trying to inoculate members of the public against misleading information. And again, we saw cases of partisan websites and fake social media accounts springing up everywhere. Of course, there are cases of parody accounts, and especially on Twitter, where you have some other people impersonating political figures. And in some cases, this accounts, there's no indication that they are parody accounts. So people would usually believe. There was a case where a national newspaper even reported one of these Twitter accounts. Like, they took their news story, they wrote a story from one of the tweets of one of the top contenders for the presidency without realizing that the account was actually a parody account. And it was quite embarrassing. And this brings us to the issue that journalists sometimes are not well informed or well trained to be able to detect what is real from what is not real. Okay, and one other thing that we noticed again was you had a lot of, I know with social media, giveaway, like giving out gifts or goodies is a trend. And what some people tried to do was to cash into the political season to try to push information about, oh, this politician is organizing an empowerment program. Just click this link or provide these details, and then you get selected. And you find out that like bad actors tried to use this they use this to deceive people. And some people had to part with like money and some other things. And you could see that this fake giveaways and scam were common, they were shared via SMS and on social media, on close messaging apps, especially WhatsApp, which is like a very popular close messaging app in Nigeria. So that is some of the trends that we notice. And like I said, talking about altered images or photos and the rest, we can see that there's a lot that AI is bringing up, like it is lowering the barrier for these bad actors to be able to push their agenda. So now I would just like to talk about the response, framing a response. Like, so what was the response to some of those trends about disinformation that I mentioned? Like, how did fact checkers react to it? So how did we handle the situation? And I think there's this quote by the CEO of Full Fact. Full Fact is a non-profit fact-checking organization in the UK, and is that every vote should be an informed vote. Because what we know is that during election period, when you have disinformation about politics, it's just the aim majorly is to distort public opinion so that people are not able to make informed choices. And for fact checkers, we believe, or even for the journalism profession, we believe one of the work of the journalism profession is to inform, to educate. And in a society where you have trust is eroding, it takes a lot of extra efforts to ensure that people are informed. Okay, so every vote should be an informed vote, and this kind of inform the work that we do. So I'm first going to start with the response of the Nigerian Fact Checkers Coalition. So for the first time, we had a situation where fact checkers came together. Usually when you have interventions like this, maybe it's from a foreign organization coming together to do like a collaborating fact-checking project. I know First Drafts did some like years ago, and I think they did in France and some countries in America and the rest, and again in Nigeria, I think the last election, you had like a collaborative fact-checking project, but this was different in the sense that you had fact-checking organizations, and many of the founding members were fact checkers. So it was an idea conceived by fact checkers locally, and it was not backed by any foreign support or any donation. You just had people who came together to collaborate. And it was quite interesting because you had situation rooms. So you have different media partners who are members of the coalition, and some of their logos are here. Maybe for those who are familiar with the Nigerian media industry, they'll be able to recognize some names. Okay. Oh. So the fact-checking, the Nigerian Coalition of Fact Checkers, they work together to combat disinformation. And one interesting thing to notice is that usually these are competitors, they are fact-checking organization pushing out fact-checking content, trying to get the attention of the audience. So you had a situation where they came together and they were cross-publishing. So people would work together, people from different fact-checking organizations would work together on a claim, and then they will cross-publish on all the platforms. So what this did was to lead to a situation where some of this fact check, we were able to get a lot of eyeballs, like people, the fact check, we were able to reach a lot of people. And again, one other thing that the coalition did was to do like a live fact checking of all political town hall meetings and debates. So you had a lot of media organizations and civic organization organizing a lot of town halls where you had some of the candidates coming to defend some of their ideologies. And the Nigerian Fact Checkers Coalition did a live fact checking of some of those claims. And this was further aided by an AI tool. An AI tool presented by Full Facts with the support of Google News Initiative. So that helped the live fact-checking activity, as they were able to transcribe some of the speeches and they were able to get other information in real time. So on election day, the Nigerian Fact Checkers Coalition opened a situation room to debug fake, like false information. So this means that on the day when you had the election, you had fact checkers working to just push out credible information in real time. So, and that was intervention by the Nigerian Fact Checkers Coalition, and Fact Matter is a member of that coalition. So as Fact Matter, one of the work that we did regarding disinformation, regarding combating disinformation during this period, we got supported by the National Endowment for Democracy, and the aim of the project was to restore information integrity on digital platforms, especially regarding the election. So we wanted to make facts go viral, because one of the things that we notice is fact-checking content, sometimes the audience and reach is quite limited, unlike the other news in politics or economics, because there's a lot of things competing for attention. So we wanted to reach more people with fact-checking content, and what we did was to look into expanding the audience in the digital sphere. I mean, look into social media to see how we can make sure that a lot of people on social media get to engage with fact check published by fact-checking organizations. So we work with 4 organizations. We work with the cable newspaper. We work with Africa Check, that is the Nigerian chapter of Africa Check. We work with Dubawa, and we work with Fact Check Org, which is published by the International Center for Investigative Reporting. And what we do is to take some of their fact check, to republish them into nice digital formats that people are able to engage with. And apart from that, one of the things that we also do is we do a lot of media literacy. And one way that we do that is to engage social media influencers and content creators, because we believe influencers are able to reach a lot of people and you could see the organic engagement. So we engage some of these influencers to produce media literacy videos, like the one on the screen. Sorry, the audio is off, where she is like a TikTok influencer, very popular on TikTok, talking about, oh, Joe Biden is relocating to Africa, and then using that opportunity to educate people about tips that they can use to identify fake news. And these are some of the other things that we do. You could see social media videos. So we turn fact check into snackable social media videos, and we push it out on our partners' social media platforms. And again, we help our media partners with graphics and cards. This is one of the graphics that we produce for Africa Check. And one other thing that we did was to also advance conversations about disinformation regarding the election. So we've had a series of Twitter spaces where we've talked on issues like gendered disinformation, and disinformation and democratic participation, just different topics, just trying to inoculate people against misleading information. And we've invited journalists and other stakeholders to talk about some of these issues. So these are the responses that we have initiated to the issues related to disinformation about the election. And one thing that we are learning is that the state actors, they are getting wiser every day. They're plugging into technologies that is making it easier to create misleading content. And we also are trying to match up to that game. By we, I mean, the fact checkers and the journalism community. So these are some of the things that we did. Like I've mentioned the trends, and these are the responses. So I look forward to hearing back from you guys if you have any questions or if you have any comments. And I know we have some participant from Nigeria. Maybe there's one or two things you want to chip in regarding some of the trends that you noticed during the election. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that. And like she rightly said, it's really an open conversation. And I think something that I noticed during your presentation and looking at what's played out in Nigeria was the fact that it doesn't look like we have been able to fully figure out how to let false information be less popular compared to the truth. And I think one of the things I also noticed was the accusation of even some fact checkers as being biased. So that's something I would like to start with. How did you deal with that? For instance, if you are saying my preferred candidate said something false, there seemed to be an intentional decision by supporters of some candidates to actually say whatever their candidate is saying is actually the truth. And I don't think this is something that is peculiar to Nigeria, as we see it playing out in the US general elections too, previous and recent elections in the US and several others, where even if a candidate says this, what I'm holding in my hand, it's a pen, and we cannot see there is nothing in my hand that is a pen. You would still see people that would bend and twist to still say that that is the truth. Did you experience that, and how did you deal with that?
Yes, I think with one of the things that we experienced, especially with the coalition, because we worked together during that election period, was when people were saying, oh, why are you fact checking this particular candidate? So we were accused of being biased, and it was kind of funny. Like one of my colleagues mentioned, it was like, we are trying to get people to get familiar with the truth, but it's like, it's a thankless job. So what we did was to explain the process. And the process is, if you have a particular candidate who gives a lot of media interviews or who has appeared in more public forum, and this particular candidate likes to quote statistics. So the thing is, naturally, we expect fact checkers to check those statistics, to look it up and provide clarity. So in that case, it's not like we are focused on winch onto a particular person, but we just wanted to give clarification because he gives more speeches, he makes more public appearance, and he appears to dish out a lot of statistics. So that was the explanation. We had to explain to the public, and we even organized a Twitter space to respond to that, so that people know that a particular person is not being winched on. Like, even if this is the person, a candidate that you want to support, we still need to fact check this person. And to explain the transparency involved in the process as well, that is very important.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have Gbemisola Esho on the line. Gbemisola, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, awesome. I'm just responding to a comment that Paul made about we don't see in Nigeria. You are seeing great information, particularly during elections, electoral disinformation just carries out of control. I think that is because it is more than what it seems. For me, I think there's a lot of influence operations there with channel participation and influences being involved there. And just as Hannah said, it's very important for practitioners to be on their toes to understand that there's a lot of manipulation, AI, and all that sort of thing playing out there. And just to say something about what Hannah said about the preferred candidate. For me, our election in Nigeria starts way before the election. I have a candidate vote. I mean, when I saw some things that I knew that, well, that sounded as if they were not, I said, the candidate, the other people that are not my candidate, I really don't care if you're my candidate or not. If you are spreading this information, I'll fact check you. Thank you.
Did you get a lot from that?
I think the audio was not quite.
Yes,
and I think she was trying to make a comment and not a question. I don't know.
I think what I got from Gbemisola as a comment is that misinformation often starts way before the election. So, and of course, which is actually true. Many of these politicians and people that are actually driving misinformation and disinformation or malinformation often think about what they are going to do long before the election starts, which is why I believe fact checkers should also ensure that they are always ahead and also planning their strategies very well. So we have some comments and questions in the chat box, and I would like to take some. Lebari Dio, let me quickly know if we know where Lebari is joining us from Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Is saying that my concern is about the speed at which certain information are fact-checked. It seems sometimes it is not done fast enough. When I see something suspicious, I usually hope the fact is put out in good time. What is your response to this?
Yes, I think that is one of the issues, one of the challenges that we've had in the industry. And even for me, I work with fact checkers. I'm like, oh, this information, the response is late. We need to bring it out as soon as possible. But because fact checking is a process and you have to follow the process. And for some of our partners, they are signatories of the IFCN, that is the International Fact Checking Network. So there is a transparency process that you have to follow, like you have to get sources. Your arguments must be very, very accurate. So that process takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of resources. But there is like an advantage with AI, like I mentioned, like I referenced during my presentation. With AI now, the work can be faster in that maybe you can get live transcription, so you don't spend too much time transcribing. So things are looking up positively in that aspect.
Yeah, Grace King would like to talk. Grace King, you have I see your hands up, and you have the floor if you're available to ask a question or make your contribution. While waiting for Grace King to take that, we have a question from Kaz Thomas. Kaz would like to know what are some ways journalists can be impartial without falling into false equivalence trap? How do you frame a news story when one side of an issue has more evidence than another side?
Okay, so I think the basic thing with that, framing a story when one side has more evidence, basically the essence of the profession to be transparent, not be partial, to provide the hardcore evidence. And even in a situation where you are not able to get some of the evidence, you show the efforts, like my editors will tell me then, you show the efforts that you've made to get this evidence, and then you reflect it in your story. That's okay, so we tried to reach this person, or we tried to access this information, but it was not available. So you don't go making conclusions in your story. So you put in your best efforts and you let the reader decide on the credibility of the story based on the evidence that you've provided.
Thank you very much. I think Grace is ready. Grace, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So a quick one. Vis-a-vis the conversation of the election results, I don't know if you guys were able to navigate in that space to have a conversation regarding Nigerians' concern about the legitimacy of even the total outcome of election in consideration of how there were so many data that revealed various parties engaged in one form of voting alteration and all of that. Did you happen to navigate into that space, or is it something you're supposed to do post-election?
Okay, yes. Like I said, we had live fact checking even during the election. So in some cases where people were making claims of, oh, there was ballot snatching somewhere. And because some of our media partners collaborated with civil organizations, so they were able to confirm the facts on the ground, like, okay, do you have someone monitoring election in this area? Did this truly happen? And in a case like that, we put it out. Now with the election results, it's still a case that is in court. So definitely we would have to wait. And I know for some other states, you've had other media platforms that have published reports about maybe the numbers, bringing out evidence, and then that is left for the readers and INEC to decide and work on. But regarding the elections also, especially now with the tribunal, there's an effort ongoing, post-election fact-checking, and that is an effort that is still ongoing among members of the coalition. So we are still monitoring the process.
Thank you for that response. And I think your answer to that question and that question itself probably highlights the limit of the extent to which fact checkers can go. We would always have most of the elections will always be debated. Parties will always have arguments, and there are limitations to what fact checkers can do. For instance, there is a difference between investigative journalism and fact checking. For fact checking, I believe the goal is to ensure that we are giving the general public the official verified results, not just creating a different database through which you are collecting your electoral results and giving it to the public. That already suggests bias, which is why I believe many fact-checking organizations often work directly with official government electoral authorities established, and sometimes having to actually wait until such organizations make official declarations, which brings me to this question. Sometimes we see electoral results, and I think it's also an issue that is happening that I've seen insights from different parts of the world. We see electoral results only officially declared several days later, while results are ready because of the appetite of the general public to know the outcome of that result right away. We see individuals saying that, okay, this was the result from my where I casted the ballot because it was counted right in our presence. And so that waiting period, people are already doing their own calculation. Meanwhile, fact checkers like you would only preach patience, that be patient until an official declaration is made. How do you deal with that delay in official transmission and announcement of results, in fact checking what is already on social media that you yourself cannot independently verify?
Okay, and I think what you just mentioned is one of the areas that we had to pre-bunk. Like, we knew this was going to happen, where you have different results flying around and people would not wait for official declaration of results. Like you mentioned, fact checkers would only work with the official information. So what we did was to do like a media literacy before then, to tell people that you have to wait, and to tell people, don't believe any result you see on social media. You have to wait until you get it from the official source. If it is not from the official source, then it's not believable. So that was how we react to that situation. We actually preempted it and we worked to correct people's impression.
Okay, we have two more questions. Noah would like to know, Noah says, hello, Hannah, thank you very much for the insightful session. However, I have a question to ask. Even with the brilliant works of fact checkers and their collaborative efforts to make fact check reports go viral, it still falls short compared to the falsehood. Also, our decisions based on these falsehoods are usually made by citizens who are not online to see the fact check reports, which are mostly available in digital platforms. What is the fact checking coalition doing to bring reports to traditional media like radio, which is often the most ubiquitous in Nigeria?
Okay, so one area is where we have been trying to work is to reach underserved audiences. And by underserved audiences in this instance, you know, people who do not get their information on social media, or people who work with radio, who listen to radio rather. And I know some of our partners like Africa Check, they have a program on radio, and sometimes they've done media literacy on radio. And I know some other partners like Fact Check Up, who have published, they've translated fact-checking materials into Hausa languages, so that even if you don't speak English, you should be able to relate. And one other area that we can use is to reach people on closed messaging apps. I know even people, you have a lot of people on WhatsApp who may really not be educated, but if you produce the material in their local language, they are much more able to engage with it. So it's an issue of collaboration, fact checkers collaborating with local radio stations and trying to translate some of this fact checking content into languages that people can understand and easily digest.
Thank you very much. We also have wow, more questions are coming. Kaz would like to know, is there a way to get ahead of election disinformation by providing the history of the candidates' efforts, key relationships, and endorsements before a campaign begins?
Definitely, maybe once you have, you know, who the candidates are, if they've won the primary elections, the work starts then, the work begins to just get the information from different sources, so long as they are verifiable sources, and just push it out. So it's setting the agenda even before the election begins. Like Mimi Salah mentioned then, that, you know, the disinformation even is before the election comes. So you start the preparation once you have official results of election primaries.
Okay, and then the last question I'll take from this session is from Ali. Ali is interested in the AI element of fighting disinformation. Can you probably add some insights, probably names the specific tools that you use? I think you mentioned it. Probably those that are interested in putting disinformation or fighting disinformation, election disinformation projects in their respective countries may also be able to benefit from.
Okay, so before going to the AI tools, I'd like to mention some digital tools that people can use to verify. Like you can use Google reverse image search to verify images. Then you can use Yandex also to verify images.
Can you spell that?
That is Yandex, Yandex.
Okay.
So these are some of the tools that you can use to verify images. So they'll tell you the date so you can compare. Sometimes there are cases of misleading context. And then there's TinEye, which can be used to verify video. So these are some of the digital tools that I can remember off the top of my head. Then when it comes to AI, like I mentioned earlier, AI, there's a lot of innovation regarding AI and journalism, and fact checkers are also using that, though it's not open to the public yet, but we've seen that AI can help journalists work faster. So it can make the fact checking process faster, like when you have access to transcription tools, or you have like a tool which kind of help you to prioritize the fact check that you need to give attention to. So that is for that. And even for us, when it comes to content amplification, one AI tool that has really been helpful is Lumen 5. And that is a tool that we've used to create our videos, because you don't need to be a video editor. You don't need to have experience in video editing, and it makes the work real quick and very fast. So that is some of the tools that we've used to amplify our fact-checking efforts.
Yeah, probably the last question I have for you before we go to another issue is looking at what you had to do to deal with the general election. What do you think anybody that is any journalist that is interested in fact checking in any forthcoming election in any part of the world, what are your key advice and key points that you think they should be aware of?
Okay, so I think one key point is to prepare. There's going to be, we've had before, it used to be shallow fakes, but now you have deep fakes. Now with AI, I don't know the terminologies that we'll use to qualify the level of deception. So we really need to prepare. We need to get familiar with these tools, and we need to get familiar with tools that we can use to detect misinformation. So you have a journalist now, if you're interested, you need to be tech savvy. And then if you have to take courses in open source intelligence, these are some of the things that can really help someone who is looking forward to covering election disinformation, because it has gone digital. So we as journalists also need to step up our skill. We need to upskill to be able to detect some of this false information and push out credible information.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sister Anna, for really sharing your insights. And hopefully, if you can share this slides with me, and I will pass it on to our attendees, and so that they can further access it. And if you're interested, I know there are some personal questions some individuals were putting up in the chat box that they would like to actually know more about directly. We can facilitate that connection with Hannah so that you can ask that question directly, and we'll be glad if you can if you can share that directly with me, and I'll facilitate that connection. And if you want to share any contact details, Hannah, so that for anybody that wants to reach out to you, you can put an email, or you can put an email in the chat box. That would be great. And so one thing that I would really like to mention for everybody is the fact that we seem to continually be on previously uncharted territory. Before, it used to be misinformers that are using these tools to actually misinform the general public, but we are increasingly now seeing AI being going mainstream. Just recently, news organizations in the US had to deal with AI-generated political ads. And when the Republican Party released an AI ad targeting following US President Joe Biden's announcement of his re-election, campaign. And so how do you do that? Well, how do you deal with that as a fact checker when you are dealing with an AI generated image, which for political ads? So as we see the electoral, and once a country successfully deploys it, this is going to consistently be the order of the day as more people as more organizations attempt to actually bring this mainstream. And there is a lot of opportunities for journalists in this space to explore. And I hope you intentionally be creative regarding the way you actually deploy it. So one quick section issue that I also want us to know, bring that following that presentation is something that I would like you to probably would serve you in your journalism career. We are looking at introducing tips and tools for you to generally improve your profession as a journalist. And one interesting one that I would like to share today would be for early stage journalists. We have so many journalists that did not even that are still at the early stages and are still probably learning on the work and seeking ways to actually improve their journalism skills. So iJNet recently published this article, How to Start Your Journalism Career, and they shared the article contains 9 tips that I believe I would like to share with journalists today. So the first tip has to do with your resume. The tip says that you should endeavor to treat your resume like a story. You know that you are a journalist, you're expected to be a storyteller. And but so when it comes to actually presenting yourself as a journalist, you should be able to tell the story of your professional and educational life. So the tip they gave is that treat your resume as if you are working on any other piece. And so make sure that you are highlighting the information that you believe should actually be right out there in your resume. And that should be like you are doing a lead in the story. Let it also be reflected in your resume. The second tip that this really good article advises you to do is to also personally have a list of favorites. For instance, if you want to become a reporter or writer, you have to be intentional about the kinds of stuff that you read. So which means you should build a list of your favorite journalists and stories. And this actually resonates well with me personally. I remember when I was just starting my journalism career, I have some specific reporters that I love their style, that I desire to write like, and whose columns are actually the ones that I often read a lot. So you as a journalist, you should also have that list on your own. Make sure you create your favorites. You have those that you repeatedly read about, those that you consider as the standard in journalism, such that the more you read about them, the more you indirectly imbibe their style, and your level of professionalism improves. So I highly recommend that you also have a list of favorites that you assiduously and regularly read about. So if you don't have that, make sure you get that done. The third one is you actually showing interest. What does that mean? I remember there was several, probably about a year ago, we announced an opportunity in the forum that individuals that want to help us write a small gig, and I announced it. I told people to turn in their applications. But when I began to review the entries, you could actually see that some individuals did not even take time to actually read what the instruction says. And that really, really can go a long way in defining your career as a journalist. So you should be actually showing interest, which means even though you are desperate to get an opportunity, it doesn't mean that you should not it doesn't mean you should apply for everything, because that becomes quite overwhelming, that you have to actually show interest in everything. I read somewhere, you will see somebody applying to the New York Times, but will be mentioning Washington Post in the letter, or you would see somebody trying to apply to The Verge, but will be mentioning UK Guardian in the cover letter. So mistakes like these are not expected from journalists, because as a journalist, you are supposed to be the one that is accurately informing the people. So please and please always show interest and demonstrate that you actually took time to read the instructions and you are doing the right thing in your application. Then the next tip that this article is saying is the fact that you actually need to reduce your level of multitasking. For some of us, this is very, very difficult, but it is always important for you to define your limits, to know your limits, and to set boundaries with work. For instance, there are some journalists that are always doing many things at the same time. So if you really can do, if you want to do many things, it's better you have a plan, have a calendar, have a scheduling tool, have something that tells you what to do at different times, such that you appear like a well-organized journalist. And also you need rest. You need to be able to rest. We know people that are always responding to their emails all around the clock. And please, please, please do endeavor to always have time to rest on your own. Try as much as possible to be structured and organized. I used to always struggle with this too until I started to fully maximize calendar tools. And I recommend that if you're not using a calendar, you start using it. That allows you to plan your task on tools on time-to-time basis. And by the time you look at it, you are actually getting a lot of results at the end. Then probably another tip that this particular article is sharing is you need to actually be interacting with the general public. That is where you can get really good story ideas. And I personally received this idea too from one of my editors. Sometimes I will be in my room thinking of story ideas. So there was this moment that I decided to actually meet one of my editors for coffee. And what he told me was that interact with people in that particular ecosystem. It's not only when you are looking for comments that you talk to people in that sector. Talk to them, meet them, hang out with them, just casually tell them what is happening, what is the issue that you are dealing with in your sector. Is there anything that you believe should deserve attention that we are not reporting? So it's when the more you interact with people and actually that they're affected by the issues you have to raise, then the higher your chance of identifying really, really exclusive story leads that would really take you places in your journalism career. And I would really, really, really highly recommend that you also embrace it. And also many things are always beyond your control. So please and please, and of course, as a career, you don't know where you are when you need a new job, you need to switch positions. So when you are faced with a lot of uncertainties, the best thing for you is to actually only manage what you can control, focus on what you can control, and that way you are really definitely sure about your plan and your career. Then the seventh tip is learning how to incubate your ideas. And the incubation stage often starts from identifying the problem you need to solve. And during this phase, being away from the story might help. Sometimes when I'm writing a story and I'm having severe headache, one of the best things I often do for myself is just to just step away. Sometimes you see me watching YouTube videos, just laughing, just smiling, just listening to music, going on social media, just listening, find something to take me away from that task. And even though I'm trying to get away from that task, the time that you are trying to relax or get something else doing, you are using that time to actually process your story, process that work you are going on, you are trying to do. And by the time you get back to it, you already have a clear understanding and perspective of what you want to do. So it's something that I also very, very much recommend that you do, especially if you are still at the early stage that you need a lot to prove. And also you need to create a fixed information diet. If you're a journalist, you also have to be aware of what is new, what is fresh, the latest. You shouldn't be pitching something that is outdated. You shouldn't be pitching a story that there is already a new update on it that you are even not aware of, and you are just trying to inform people about something that is very, very old, that is no longer true. It can be really, really embarrassing for a journalist that is trying to pitch a story to an editor, but there is an update that the person pitching that story is not aware of. As journalists, you are expected to inform the public, but if you yourself you are not well informed, then there is a serious issue. So have a fixed information diet daily. Know where you can get the latest insights in your profession, in your lead, in the bits that you cover, and be consistent about that, so that you can convincingly say that, okay, I know everything that is happening in my space. And the last but not least tip that I think I would like you to go with today is many times don't just be talking. Try as much as possible to actually listen. And I think especially if you are doing an interview, and there is this tip, there is this for you to get the best quote, I think you have to listen more. And there's this tip that somebody shared with me that I've also been using to get the best quote when you are doing an interview. You know, you often have the list of questions that you want to ask this person. So I do that too. I have my questions that I want to ask this person I'm interviewing. But when I'm done with my question, the way I end my interview is asking the person, is there any other thing, any issue any last words, any comment that you'd like to make on any issue that is related or unrelated to this that you think should be out there? Most of the time, that is where the golden comment comes in. That is where you receive the best comments from that respondent, because that is something that the person actually wants to say and thinks about and is really, really relaxed to actually say it. So most of the best quotes, if you're not doing that in your interview, I highly, highly encourage you to do that. So you can actually see that article, the article that I mentioned, the article that those tips are coming from is right on HygineNet's website. So this is the article. The article is Starting Your Journalism Career. Keep these 9 tips in mind. It's not just for early stage journalists, but it's for actually every journalist. And I'm going to put the link in the chat box right now so that you can check it out. You can check it out yourself. So with that done, I want to really, really tell you that at the ICFJ's Pamela Howard Forum on Global Crisis Reporting, we are actively engaging. We have a very, very robust Facebook page where I'm the manager, I am the forum manager, and I actively share tips and insights. What you're looking at is our forum page. If you are not a member of that forum, I highly encourage you to be part of our community, and information regarding these and several other webinars, opportunities, tools, and resources that we believe would help you in your journalism career. They are often shared in this group, and we also actively seek people's opinion. We know we ask you what is happening, and our webinars sessions are often live streamed on the page. So I've dropped the link in the Facebook in the chat box, and I encourage you to actually be part of it. And we use it. It's also an opportunity for you to let us know your opinion about issues as they affect you personally as a journalist. Just yesterday, in commemorating the World Press Freedom Day, I did a little survey in our Facebook group where I asked our forum members' opinion, whether they are excited about World Press Freedom Day or not. And more than 90% said they were really, really excited. 6% said they are not excited, and 1% said they are quite indifferent. So please and please, thanks to everyone that participated, and thanks for sharing your opinions with us. But more importantly, for those that are not a member of that forum, I encourage you to be part of it. To know more about this forum and to this Pamela Howard Forum on Global Crisis Reporting, which is available in several other languages, please check out the International Center for Journalists website on www.icfj.org, and to also access resources and tools like the article from which I got today's tips and tools from. I will encourage you to check out IGNet's website on www.ignet.org. And next week, I hope you have a fabulous week ahead of you. We don't have a webinar next week, but there is something exciting that I'll be sharing in our forum with all our forum members. And and one more thing before we go, we are always excited in learning from you. We want to know how to better serve you as journalists. We want to know how the International Center for Journalists can improve our engagement with you, and which is why we are currently conducting a survey. It's a very, very short survey, and if you participate, we have a way. We want to encourage as many to participate, and we are going to be there'll be a token of appreciation of you sharing your information, and the winner will be selected with a fabulous prize promised. So please and please, the last thing that I just just click it right now before you leave this session, and we'll be glad to hear from you. Let us know how you've benefited from this forum, and let us know your specific area of interest. What do you think would be tailor-made specific for you that you'll be able to enjoy and participate and improve your crisis reporting as a journalist? And just share your feedback regarding how we do things and how you think we can better serve you. So on behalf of the ICFJ's entire team, I want to thank Hannah for sharing her insights with us on today's webinar. And I also want to thank each and every one of you that attended this session and stayed to the very end. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. If it's still morning over there, enjoy the rest of your morning. If it's afternoon, I hope you're having a sunny afternoon where you are. And if it's evening and you're already ready to go to bed, I say have a nice evening and just have a nice dream and enjoy the rest of the day. That's it from here. Hannah, do you want to say bye to our participants?
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. I've dropped my email address, so I hope to continue the engagement. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you very much, and bye, everyone.